Say goodbye to this one. Bai Jobe entered the transfer portal and is gone from KU football.
You are Locked On Jayhawks, your daily podcast on the Kansas Jayhawks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on? Derek Johnson here. This is Locked On Jayhawks. Thanks for making us your first listen every day. Thank you to the everydayers catching each and every episode of the show. You can find us anywhere you get your podcast, including on our YouTube page where you can like and subscribe to the show. And on today's edition of LOJ, a little bonus episode for you here, we're going to be talking a little KU football because Bai Jobe, who is a former big-time recruit that the program brought in, well, he has entered into the transfer portal and is seemingly away from KU football. I guess who knows? At this day and age, we saw Floyd Badunga. Maybe something can happen to bring him back. But we'll get into that. We'll get into where it leaves KU in the defensive end room, as well as kind of hunting in the transfer portal, so to speak. So here's the news. So his trainer, Sean Cooper, posted this on Twitter. He said Kansas Edge Bai Jobe is entering the transfer portal with 3 years remaining. He will be a redshirt sophomore this upcoming season. So if you remember Bai Jobe, it was a big get when Kansas got him out of the transfer portal last offseason. So he, out of high school, was like a very highly regarded prospect, 4-star prospect on ESPN, Rivals, 24/7 Sports, and on 3. He was listed as like a top 150 overall recruit by all of those different sites. So like very high level prospect, one of the top 10 or 15 edge players, depending on which site that you're kind of looking at there. A raw player out of high school, somebody who, moved to the United States in 8th grade as like an exchange student. So like wasn't playing football for all of his life, but was a freak athlete and picked it up quickly to that level, and then all of a sudden earned that 4-star status, goes to Michigan State as a freshman, plays in just one game in 2023 where he had 2 tackles and 11 snaps, but he's able to retain his red shirt by not playing 4 years. So then he comes to Kansas as a redshirt freshman, and for a Kansas team that, you're kind of developing these young stud talents at defensive end with Bai Jobe, with DJ Warner, and with Dak Brinkley, and with Jobe, he starts the season injured. Then he ends up, I guess he starts the season injured, but is kind of playing through it with the cast on his arm. Still plays 5 snaps in the opener against Lindenwood, 6 against West Virginia in week 6. Starts to see his snap count go up a little bit over the back half of the season. You're looking at over the first 4 games that he played in through the first 6 weeks of the season. He played 33 snaps between Lindenwood, West Virginia, TCU, and Arizona State. And then between the Houston, Iowa State, Colorado, and Baylor games, he ends up playing 46 snaps. So he's a little bit of an uptake there. But Baylor game was the biggest one he played, 28 snaps in what was the finale for KU. So you see that and you go, okay, a guy who played 79 snaps, which was 5th on KU last season at defensive end. But 3 of the guys in front of him in snaps no longer with the team. Jeremy Robinson, Dylan Woodkey graduated, and then DJ Warner transferred away. So it was like, okay, he was second in returning snaps among KU defensive ends. Graded out, average-ish on PFF, above average, whatever you're going to call it, 63 on PFF, but again, just 79 snaps. So can't take a ton away from that necessarily. But this is a guy who is going to be counted on to be, for this year, I think more of a rotational piece. And is this move, is him transferring away, is it at all indicative that maybe he was getting beat out? Is it indicative that maybe he wants to be a starter somewhere, right? Like maybe there's a chance he was going to be on that 2 deep, but he wasn't going to be a starter for KU. But I don't know. Certainly this one is a little bit weird because I look at it and I'm like, I look at the current KU, defensive end room, and I'm like, okay, even if you are the second string at defensive end here, the 2 guys who are projected starters for KU are seniors. So, like, you're going to have your opportunity as soon as the next year. And wherever Bai Jobe goes to as a transfer this year, is he going to be a starter? I don't know. I guess it depends where he goes, right? If you're going to another Power 5, probably not. If you're going to, transfer down a little and just opt for more playing time, then maybe that is the answer. Now, does this come in from maybe Kansas, again, like saying that certain players have beat him out further down the depth chart? Or does this come in from, I don't know, Kansas looking for more defensive end competition and to that notion, feeling like he hasn't been good enough so far, so they're going to need more players in the portal. And they've told him, hey, we're looking for players that are going to compete with you for even the second string in the portal. And from his perspective, he's like, no, I don't want that. So I don't know what the reasoning is specifically, but obviously from this year's perspective, probably losing more of a rotational piece. From a future year perspective is where you really feel like you're losing out on something possibly here, right? Again, a former 4-star recruit, the idea would be, okay, maybe by 2026 and or 2027, you have something really cooking here that you lose out on. And yes, you still have that possibility with guys like Dak Brinkley and some of the other highly recruited guys that we'll get into here in our third segment of the show. But it just feels like these two guys with immensely high potential with DJ Warner and Bai Jobe that you brought on that we were so excited about. Now you don't really get to see the fruits of your labor there. And I don't know if there is a lesson here. I don't know that there is, to be completely honest, but certainly unfortunate for KU football. So where do they go from here? Certainly Lance Leipold going to be hunting in the transfer portal. Today's episode of Locked On Jayhawks is brought to you by Supply House. Get the supplies you need from the site made for the skilled trades, Supply House. Whether you're in plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, Supply House is the reliable way to order products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Plus, with a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from 400-plus top brands, you'll find exactly what you need delivered fast from coast to coast. Need help with an order? Supply House offers expert support and industry-leading service, so you'll always talk to a real person. And for trade pros looking for an extra edge, their free TradeMaster program offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Thousands of skilled professionals are already taking advantage. Now it's your turn. Join the TradeMaster program today at supplyhouse.com/TM and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Plus, use promo code S-H-5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com, promo code S-H-5. Thanks for joining us here on this bonus episode of Locked On Jayhawks. So now Lance Leipold needs to do some work in the transfer portal after Bai Jobe leaves the roster there. And you're probably looking at, I mean, it already seemed like KU was going after defensive ends. Was this a response that they knew this was going to happen with Bai Jobe and that's why they were looking? Or is it possible now that they're going to view this as, hey, we're already looking to add one more, and now that Jobe leaves two, we're going to try to add two more. And if the idea with Jobe was to be, a future player and a rotational piece this year, maybe it makes sense to add somebody who can be if you're adding two, right? One is more of your ready to go right now, and one of them is more of your like long-term players. Again, we'll see if that ends up kind of being the case, but we mentioned some on one of our previous shows that it sounds like they're going to have a visit being set up with Cam Williams, who's a transfer from Georgia State. So that would certainly be one to watch. Somebody who had 21 tackles last year at Georgia State with one sack, one forced fumble. Not super high numbers necessarily, but in his limited snaps that he got, graded out really well on Pro Football Focus. He's 6'5", 245 pounds. He'll be a senior this upcoming season after spending 2 years at Jacksonville State. So he would be somebody who would kind of fit the billing as you kind of would expect him to be able to come in and, compete right away. Then there's this Leroy Harris kid, 6'5", 230-pound freshman from Chattanooga. I believe Chattanooga at the FCS level had 11 tackles last year, so didn't play a ton at an FCS level as a freshman, but entering the portal, maybe he's more of your future piece necessarily, right? And then another guy that we mentioned on a previous episode was Eddie Kelly Jr. He's a 6'4", 278-pound defensive end who spent time in South Florida, Georgia Tech, and Missouri. He's in the transfer portal now. He'll be a senior. For his career, he has, 19 tackles at USF, 37 tackles at Georgia Tech, and then 20 tackles at Missouri. Not a ton of sack production, but he's been kind of a good run-stopping defensive end, and maybe that makes sense as a strong defensive end because when you're looking at the two defensive end spots, kind of the weak side and the strong side, I think Jobe was profiling more to be a strong side defensive end, so maybe that makes some sense, or maybe it's a name that we haven't even talked about. But I do think expect Lance Leipold to bring in a defensive end via the transfer portal, if not two, at this point in time after the Jobe news. What does the current room look like? Let's discuss that next. This episode of Locked On Jayhawks is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time makes it fast and easy to get playoff tickets, whether it's to the NBA, NHL, or if it's to a comedy event, theater event, a concert, even when demand is sky high, prices on the app actually go down as tip-off gets closer, and their last-minute deals can save you up to 60%. Here's why I use Game Time, and I love it too during the summer when we get to like baseball season here, which I guess we are in baseball season right now. But they have their last minute deals where you can save up 60% off buying last minute for all these events, sports, concerts, comedy, theater, etc. And then with the all-in pricing, it means no surprise fees at checkout. What you see is what you pay. So you pull up the Game Time app, you can be on your way to the baseball game. And sometimes, you don't want to necessarily plan, maybe if you're buying for a big group, but like, I don't know, sometimes with events like that, like, there's going to be tickets available. You buy on your way in, and it's going to kind of save you some money sometimes. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCollege, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Thanks for joining us on this bonus episode of Locked on Jayhawks. Don't forget to check out our deep dive of Cedric Coward and what he could bring to the table for KU basketball out of the transfer portal there. All right, what is the current look at the defensive end room for KU football right now? Well, at the strong side of the defensive end, so 7 total defensive ends on scholarship, I believe, for KU at this point in time. So the strong side, which is where Jobe was from for KU, I think Justice Finkley, who's the transfer you brought in from Texas, to me, he's kind of been thought of as, ever since you brought him in, like probably going to end up being the starter. Obviously, he has to earn it, but seems like that has all gone according to plan at this point in time. So then it's kind of a competition for who was going to be the second string. And was that going to be Bai Jobe? Was it going to be Dylan Brooks coming off the injury, right? You would think Brooks coming off the season-long injury, maybe that would be advantage for Jobe. But again, maybe KU viewed it and said, yeah, listen, you would win the job right now, but our intention in the portal is to get somebody even better, and that's going to knock you to third string. I don't know. Also, you have guys on the weak side like Dean Miller, who will be a redshirt senior, although I don't know how that all works with the JUCO stuff. Dak Brinkley, who will be a redshirt freshman. Caleb Redd, who will be a redshirt freshman, former talented guy. And then wherever Adrian Hawley and Garrett Martin kind of profile in as incoming players as freshmen. The good news here is that even though Jobe is being seen as somebody who like has this high potential, you still do have guys who fit that billing, who are on that depth chart, right? Dak Brinkley, former 4-star as a redshirt freshman now. He still fits the billing as being a guy who has a very high potential that can reach that for you. Same with Caleb Redd, who's a highly recruited 3-star, prospect who went to an SEC school, right? With Adrian Hawley and Garrett Martin. Those are 2 dudes who could be real dudes for you in the future. Dylan Brooks is a former 4-star recruit. So, you still do have potential on the defensive end room. Dean Miller's a second-team All-Big 12 player for current production. Justice Finkley should be able to give you some current production after coming in from Texas. I still like the way the defensive end room looks. I don't think it's one of the biggest strengths on the roster necessarily. I think they do need to add more depth, and I do think that's why they're looking into the transfer portal. But I don't think it's in a place of just it's a mess right now. Obviously, you would have liked to have Bai Jobe and DJ Warner still on the roster, but that's the nature of the transfer portal. You got to kind of deal with the punches as you go, roll with the punches, and kind of figure things out from there. And I do think they're going to be able to figure some of that stuff out with the portal. And I do still like some of the pieces of the combination of current production and future production that you still do have, even without Bai Jobe on the roster, though, it certainly is a miss to not have him. All right, that'll do it for this episode of Locked on Jayhawks. You can find our show anywhere you hear podcasts, including on our YouTube page. And again, don't forget to check out our deep dive on Cedric Coward, talking a little KU basketball there. Thanks for making Locked on Jayhawks your first, your second listen, whatever it is, every day. And don't forget to check out some of our other shows across the Locked on Podcast Network, like Locked on College Basketball, Locked on College Football, to get you ready for the rest of this portal season that is to come. See you next time on LOJ.